An agitated kid turns calm with a sourdough bread making.
That would be
I
the hook.
that will be the hook. Today, we aren't here to list accolades or paint a glossy picture of success. We are looking at the raw, unfiltered reality of building an empire from the ground up while fighting battles nobody else can see. Joining me is Ananya Kera, a 25-year-old pastry chef and entrepreneur running three thriving outlets of Ditya Bakehouse in Gurgaon.
I was always very clear from 8th or 9th standard only that I wanted to become a chef. Ditya is something that my sister and I decided we'd do together. I just knew that this is all that I have. I cannot work a job in the industry. That is something I'm very clear of.
But behind the beautiful artistic style cafes is a story of heavy grief, toxic kitchen realities, and a generation completely misunderstood by the corporate world.
It's called a female chef, but you don't call a male chef a male chef. You just call them chef. He was just like, what's the big deal? It's just your system. People lose people every day. People are dying every day. It's not the end of the world. Before I say something, and mentally I will take like a 2-second pause and say, Ananya, respond, not react.
Kitchen without empathy is just a
Sad place to be in. I think it's very important to surround yourself with people who set up like delusional standards of success, like delusional, something that you would laugh at when you listen to.
Ananya, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
25-year-old, three thriving outlets, managing a team of 9 staff and working with external stakeholders, all elder to you, way elder to you, right? I would love to hear what drove you from sitting in the comfort of London or sitting in the comfort of a corporate or a business that could have easily been your story. What made you start this, Ditya?
From the very beginning, I was very, very clear about what I wanted to do in life and the career that I wanted to pursue, which is very rare. I don't think a lot of people, had that direction from like the early ages. So yeah, I mean, that is just something that drove me. I was always very clear from 8th or 9th standard only that I wanted to become a chef, and I started taking part in like school competitions and representing my school in various places and got some awards and stuff. And that sort of, motivated me further to actually seriously take this up. And I think life just happened so, and one opportunity after the other just kept showing up. And yeah, it just
At the
worked
age
out.
of 8 to 10, you knew that you wanted to be
In grade 8th to 10th.
grade 8.
Yeah,
Okay.
in class 8th or 10th.
And what was the inspiration that drove you to decide that I want to be a chef?
So I'd always seen my grandmother in the kitchen, and she was an amazing cook. Like, she used to make some really, really cool dishes. And I'd grown up with her. Both my parents are working, so we were technically brought up by our grandparents, and I was very, very pampered. I used to eat all, like, good things that she used to make at home. And yeah, I mean, I would just spend like the days, summer vacations, just observing her, seeing how she's doing, what she's doing. And slowly, slowly, I started experimenting on my own and had like multiple disasters. And yeah, slowly, slowly, sort of my interest grew. And like I told you, then I started representing my school, and my school really supported me. They would
Oh, so you represented school in cooking? Ah,
yeah, in cooking. So before us, like there was me and one more friend of mine, and the two of us. It was only after we, pushed our home science teacher to, let us like do this, is when our school started accepting invitations for cooking competitions from other schools. Before that, there was nothing like
so
that.
you created it.
Yeah. I mean, I would like to say that. So, yeah. And after that, in fact, after we graduated from school, is when our school also introduced home science as an elective option. So, I like to think that I contributed to that.
I'm sure. That's so nice. All of us have fond memories of grandmothers and grandmothers cooking. but not everybody gets inspired to become a chef.
Yeah.
I'm glad you did. Ho- However, you chose baking as your stream, right?
Yeah. So I always wanted to be in the hot kitchen side. So when I was studying in Aurangabad, they like make us work in different departments and give us like an exposure to various departments. So that then we can make a choice as to where we want to like end up. So I really love the hustle bustle of the kitchen and everybody's, shouting. And I was a very agitated kid when I went to college. So I really used to enjoy, this like hustling culture until COVID happened. And then the fad of sourdough started, and my sister and I just started making like a sourdough starter at home. And that sort of takes like 2 days for the bread to like actually come to life after the starter is done and everything. So, yeah, I mean, I just realized that baking takes a lot of patience. And that's when the switch happened because then I started making more and more bread. I started selling it in my society. Yeah, I just really started enjoying the process. And I realized that
I love
maybe
this. An agitated kid turns calm with a sourdough bread making. Like
that could be the hook.
that will be the hook. We in coaching we spend a lot of time trying to figure out how to bring the behavioral shift. Sourdough seems to have a miracle there,
Yeah, I
right in
would.
front of us. That's interesting. That's a great story to have. This shift happened. You did take a liking for that. What was the inspiration behind Ditya?
So Ditya is something that my sister and I decided we'd do together. It's actually an amalgamation of our names. So her name was Anandita and my name is Ananya. And together, if you join our names, it becomes Ditya.
Ditya. And Ditya has a meaning, right?
Yeah, it literally means an answered prayer. So it also is very, very symbolic to our story and our journey as sisters. And my sister was a cancer patient. So when her treatment was going on, we had like really long days in the hospital, and we would just be going through chemo and stuff. And that is when we started planning our business together. And we sort of wrote down, I still have that diary, and we sort of, divided our work as to the things that will be under her scope and the things that will be under my scope. And yeah, she did not enjoy her job at all. She was a computer science engineer by profession. And that's not something that she enjoyed doing. And she was really fascinated by, my choice of career. And she was also very sort of, I don't know, bewildered as to how I knew that I wanted to pursue pastry with so much conviction. And yeah, so we decided to join hands and make Ditya come to life. But unfortunately, she couldn't make it. And in the year 2021, in December, she succumbed to cancer. And
So sorry.
I was still not done with my education then, so Ditya couldn't really start. Um, and then I went off to London to pursue my further studies. And then I came back from London. And that's when I decided that then was the right time to start it. It's been like 2.5 years now of running my business, and I really like it.
And each time when people come and ask you about Ditya and the meaning behind Ditya, and every outlet of yours has the photo of you and
Yeah.
your sister,
Yeah.
is it difficult to go touch back the trauma and come back? How did you overcome this?
I think initially it was when I just started it because it was not just customers asking, it was just, every success, like every small success that we would get, it would remind me of her. And every small failure we would get, I would just be like, oh my God, I don't know how to do this on my own. I want to talk to her. So I think more than customers asking, it was, an amalgamation of all these factors that would just keep triggering every day. But then slowly, 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 I think I just got used to it. And
When you and I connected, what sparked me was one, a 25-year-old having three outlets, such a calm, matured composure. The other one was also one statement you made. Shri, I don't know what you want out of me, but the battles I have are more internal than external. So is it okay for your guest to, come with that story? That really struck a chord. And I think being vulnerable and saying that my battles were internal, right? That takes a lot of courage for what you went through, the trauma of loss, pain, a dream that was envisioned with a sister and not having the sister, but being constantly reminded with every bit of success. There's a lot of inner strength that you have to develop. I want you to share that journey of how you built that resilience with you and share it with our audience.
So I think when I started, I wasn't like this. I was an extremely volatile human being. There are days when I still am. I think it just comes with being an entrepreneur. You would know. Yeah, I mean, there are days that, are just very, very difficult. But one thing that just keeps me going is the fact that I don't have an option B. And that's how I've lived my entire life without having backup options. Like when I went to college, I was very sure that I wanted to go to this college, didn't apply to any other college. In London, only applied to one college, got in, did my master's. So I think it's just that, just that confidence of not having a fallback option, which is a good thing and a bad thing. I mean, not everybody can, function like that, which is also fair. I think it's important to be prepared for what life can throw at you. But it just somehow worked in my case. I think destiny, luck, all of these factors have contributed a lot. Another thing I feel like is it's just like a small, not a piece of advice, something that's just worked for me is that I think it's very important to surround yourself with people who set up like delusional standards of success, like delusional, something that you would laugh at when you listen to, like, getting like a private jet, like crazily delusional standards, because then you're just so focused and, you're just so at it that, you just want to do it. You just want to do it. You have to get that private jet that then your journey just starts, like things automatically start falling into place.
So you're saying manifest with a
Yeah, with a
with
delusional
a
mindset. Nah,
I don't know
not
whether
something that's
delusional mindset
attainable.
works, but at least have a vision for yourself and
Yeah.
envision it and have a, larger than life goal.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. When I started it, I never knew I would have 3 outlets in 2 years. That was not the plan, but I just knew that this is all that I have. I cannot work a job in the industry. That is something I'm very clear of. I
Let's talk about that. What made you decide that?
So I worked in India and I worked in London, and working styles are completely different. In London, it was so good. The experience was so nice. People are so inclusive. They're, extremely supportive. And in India, that was not the case. I had an opportunity to work with chefs who I'm still in touch with, by the way, who really, helped me in India. But not everybody is like that. I mean, I had my fair bit of good and bad people while working. So, yeah, I think that sort of made me realize that, eventually it's not something that I want to do. I don't want to work a job. I just want to be an empathetic leader and, lead with that.
Lead with that. And when you were in the kitchens of India,
Yeah.
let's stick to India.
Yeah.
The kitchens of India. What surprised me was I really thought the hospitality industry and the cooking, especially the cooking in the kitchen, would be
Female centric.
female centric.
Yeah.
That was my thought.
I
But you
think
shocked
it's
me actually.
I think it is female centric when it comes to homes and when women have to be married. It's so generic. But commercially, in like hotels, restaurants, it's not. It's not. It's very hard for women to make their space. And now times are changing. I think there's so much more awareness about female chefs and, like things coming up. But yeah, it's still a hard battle, I would say. It's just a small thing, when like it's called a female chef, but you don't call a male chef a male chef. You just call them chef. But a female chef is
Oh
called a
my
female chef.
goodness.
So it's just, these tiny things that are still very much rooted in the industry where we work in. And I think it needs people
Wow.
like a lot of strong
That
women
hits
to
hard.
change that.
That
Yeah.
really hits hard. That commercial kitchens are male dominated and there's a gender. I mean,
Bias.
you have to call yourself a female chef.
As sad as that is, yes.
Yeah. One of the leaders who came here, Deepthi Bopaya, when I asked her, what would you like to change? She said, can we remove the word woman from leadership term?
Yeah,
Why can't
yeah.
we just be leaders?
Yeah. Yeah, I saw in the rapid fire round and
Yeah,
not
she did.
women leader, it'll
Not
just be
women leader, just
leader.
leader.
Yeah.
And it looks the same in almost every industry we are touching. Okay. What advice do you have for women who pursue? I'm sure that culinary art is not going to restrict its passion. You cannot restrict the passion there. So, what advice would you have for people aspiring the career in hospitality or in pursuing becoming a chef?
I think that it's very important for people to work on both sides to know what is it that they want. Some people are really happy working in hotels, in restaurants, in standalone places because it works well for them. And because I run a place, I also have a staff of like 9 people. For them, it's a job, right? So, I mean, I have to make sure that I set up that inclusive environment, that safe space that they don't feel they would want to come to work. That's the vibe I try to create with it. I don't know. I hope people are able to recognize that. I mean, I have staff who've been with me from my second and third month of the operations till now. So it's almost like 2.5 years. So I think I'm doing okay there.
What
But
are you doing differently?
I think so. I'll tell a small story here. So one time I was working, I was interning, and this was a couple of days after my sister had passed away, and I'd taken a leave, of course, and then I'd gone back to work. And they put me at one of the life counters. So it was Christmas time, and they put me at a life counter to make waffles or something. And I was standing there, of course, I was still, it was the grief was very new, it was very fresh, the trauma was still there, and I was still breaking down every day. And I was standing at the life counter, and I see this family of four come in, two daughters, mother, father, sitting, enjoying the brunch. There were like Santas all around. It was nice, like a jolly environment. And of course, it was very triggering for me. So I
Yeah.
excused myself. And I went back and sort of composed myself, and I requested the chef if I could stay at the back end because I was not ready to face the customer. Of course, I can't greet people crying. That's not how
Yeah.
customer wants to be greeted. So then he was just like, "What's the big deal? It's just your sister. People lose people every day. People are dying every day. It's not the end of the world." And in that moment, I just threw my apron. I left. I just left my workplace only. I came back home. I said, I don't want to finish my shift. Leave this. I know it's not the right way to approach things, but in that moment, I did not expect an elder, like an elder leader, somebody who's in a position of power to say this to me.
Yeah.
And I expected some form of comfort from him, which did not sort of come, obviously. And I just chose to leave. And then I went back the next day and, whatever things happened. But that day, I sort of realized that when I reach that level where I am managing people with me who working with, I never say people working under me because I don't think I am in any position to say that. So I always say people who work with me. I don't think that I can ever do that to them. Like I always try to lead with empathy. I always first try to put myself in their shoes. And I mean, there are times when, I feel it is a little unrealistic, the situations and the excuses that they come up with. But I would still, I feel like I'm a lenient leader.
Would you want to call yourself a lenient leader or an empathetic leader?
I would say a mix of both.
Both. That was a bit emotional and just moved my heart. So sorry you had to go through that. So sometimes leaders inspire us like by showing how you need to be, and some inspire by saying, this is not how you need to be, right? I don't want to be this person.
Yeah.
Learning is everywhere. And I think you learned that day. We also spoke about not just the diversity inside the kitchen, but also outside, right? Just being a Gen Z, were you taken seriously when you built your business? That's an interesting journey to share.
I think that's something I'm still struggling with because, like you mentioned, I'm always dealing with people who are much, much older than I am. I mean, yeah, it is a bit of a struggle. I don't think being a female is something that affects it as much as being young.
Yeah.
Because yeah, I mean, I'm dealing people my father's age, all these CEOs who I'm trying to sort of crack business with, then they're just like, oh, just have to support the small kid. Let's just give her some business, I think it comes from that mindset. But I look at it in a way where it's okay. At least I'm getting something out of it. At least out of sympathy only, they're giving me business. And then
How do you convert that into a professional deal?
I always go very well prepared. I always, when I'm meeting somebody professionally for business, I always make sure that I'm very, very well prepared as to, what's coming. Like, I'll have my presentations ready in my laptop because that's not what they're expecting. They're expecting somebody to come with a notebook and sit and, just be like, hi, bro. But I don't think I lead like that. I think I always like to do my homework. I'm very well versed. I will stalk their LinkedIn profile. I'll make sure I know everything I can about the person who I'm meeting, so that it just, puts a good impression. It just shows that you've done your bit. And I think, yeah, that has sort of helped me. That's sort of helped me in letting people know that I am at par with what.
Is it only when cracking business deals, or also is it when building businesses that you face this challenge of being the younger generation?
I think, yeah, it's everywhere because, like, literally everybody, all my staff, I call them bhaiyas and didis because everybody is elder to you. But it's also different dealing with different category of people, somebody who sort of this didi who helps us clean the bakery, sweep and mop. Dealing with her is a completely different game than, dealing with, say, my driver bhaiya or somebody like my head chef or my social media team. Like, it's different dealing with everybody, and you just have to sort of mold yourself, and understand where they're coming from, what problems they are facing, how is it that I can make things easier for them. And yeah, and I think one more thing that I just keep telling myself is that something my grandmother used to say, because my mom also runs a business, is that their homes, we are responsible for running their homes. So we always have to keep that in mind, that if somebody has a problem, we always have to keep that thought at the back of our mind, so that we know that, this is something that's our responsibility, their kids, their families, something that we need to be more mindful of.
Beautiful. That's a very wise and matured statement that you made, and transitioning from your grandmother. And how does it feel to be the business person? And you said it was inspired. I mean, it didn't come naturally. It comes from a lineage where your family, the women led businesses. Um, how do you take that so gracefully?
I've always seen the women in my family working. My grandmother was a retired principal. My mom runs a business and my dad is still doing a job. And that is still very much the same. My mom is still running her business. It's in 30 years. And my dad is still working his job. Of course, things have changed a lot. Like, her business has completely changed. Her way of working has completely changed from when we were kids to now. Yeah, I mean, usually in most stereotypical households, it's the other way around. Like, the man is running the business and the woman usually works a job. But that was not the case in my house. In the book also that my sister and my mom have wrote, we've mentioned that, my sister was so inspired by this thought that my mom enjoys running her business so much, that sort of motivated the two of us. And, like, as kids, we would always see her hustling. We would always see her, doing this, that. And there was also a point in time when much later we got to know that my mom was actually earning more money than my dad. I mean, we didn't know that as kids, but as we grew up, we got to know that. And I think it was just so inspirational, like, to see. And this, my mom started a business after she got married. So she had a house to look after. She had to do the duties of being the daughter of the house and then managing kids and then whatever. And with that, she started her business. She started it after she got married. So I can't even imagine how she did it, and like the kind of problems that she must have faced
Yeah.
that time.
And what challenges as a woman in business did you see and learn and, shape yourself? What were the lessons that you learned?
Dealing with different people in a different way. For example, when I was getting my GST number, I had to deal with like some like government officials. It's very difficult and different dealing with them. You're young and you're a woman, you're like, madam this, madam that. I'm like, like, it's not something you're exposed to. Your parents don't teach you this. They don't teach you this in school. It's something that you just have to learn the hard way when you put yourself out there. So I think, yeah, these kind of like
So,
small
did age
learnings.
become a benefit, or did age become
I like
a
to look at it as
disadvantage?
as a benefit only, no? Because then by the time I'm 28, 29, I would have all this experience that people who are then starting will have after that age.
No, I meant, did age become a benefit in dealing with these men there or people there to get
I
things
think
done?
it's the same for them. I don't think
It
that,
wasn't any
yeah,
different. So, it was
yeah.
not the ages which is a
No,
benefit.
no. Yeah.
Did the gender play a role?
Little bit, yes. I think men are always taken more seriously. Like, even now when things are getting out of hand or people are not taking me seriously, Papa, please come. I need your help. Please talk to this person. It's not happening. So, and then it gets done. It gets done, and he's like, "What is the problem?" I'm like, "You will never understand what the problem is. You will never know this."
Oh, so you're saying
Yeah.
you need your
Yeah.
dad
And
to
yeah. In a lot of places where I feel like they're just like, nahi, aap kyun aaye ho? Get your father. Why have you come? I'm like, okay, I get my father.
is that a place where they feel that no, this space is where men have to come and take
Yeah.
decisions?
Yeah. I think so. I think it stems from that. But I think initially it was difficult for me also because I was so new to business. I didn't know how things worked, all of that. But now because I've done 3 shops and I've seen that those side of things, I'm also a lot more confident. So I'm like, no, you tell me only. Aap mujhe bata do. I will talk to my father. Like he can't come. I just say he's very busy.
What is the future of Ditya?
Just to grow and to keep everything under my control for as long as possible. That's not to say that I don't want to delegate responsibility. It's just that I don't see a franchisee model coming up anytime soon because I feel like sometimes somewhere along the way it just loses the essence of business. Some franchisees do, is in my observation as a chef. And Ditya is involved and attached with so much emotion that I don't think I'm ready to let that go. Of course, money is a big part of it. All businesses eventually want to make money, but my approach is slightly different when it comes to these things. So I think I'll just like to grow it with my team, keep things under my scope and control for as long as I can.
I'm very curious. Eighth grade, you wanted to become a chef, you became a chef. And then finishing your college, you wanted to become an entrepreneur, you become an entrepreneur. Now, what next in your aspiration?
Is to get a private jet.
And you're saying you want to keep everything in your control and get the private jet. And you think Ditya can achieve that?
Yeah,
Ah,
absolutely.
beautiful.
100%. This is what I mean by setting up delusional standards. It's just to put it out in the universe and then somehow just make it happen. You don't need a roadmap. I think things just start aligning on their own.
Ananya, your mother is a businesswoman. You've been inspired by her a great deal. You're an entrepreneur. Do you see any difference in you being the Gen Z generation in business, having a set vision and had a clear track on what you wanted to do? Is there any difference you see in the way we operate?
I think yes. I think as Gen Zs, we're very clear as to what we want. We have very clear boundaries. Even people like some people who are younger than me who are working with me, if their shift timing ends at 8, 7:55, their bags are packed. So they are just, as a generation, I feel like we're valuing work-life balance so much, which is also great. Like it's something that I really sort of advocate and try to establish in the industry. Of course, busy season gets very, very busy. But the way I would tackle it is, have more people, volunteers, staff, whatever I can manage so that there's no burden on one person to sort of fulfill a task. And yeah, as a generation, I feel like that boundary has been so clear from the very beginning that it's helped us. It's helped me. It's helped me create that environment at Ditya where people are just, they value time, they value work, and they know that if they're here till like 8, then everything that is under their scope has to be done by 8 so that they can leave.
Hmm.
So, and this is something I very funnily I learned in London because there we used to get paid by the hour. So they would never make us overwork. In India, that's not the case, unfortunately. But yeah, I would never overwork in London, even if I wanted to, because I was so used to working 10, 12 hours. I was like, okay, maybe I'll get some more money. They would just like kick me out in like 8 hours, done, just leave. So I think, yeah, that is something I learned that,
So
it's
how do you track productivity then? Because if you're saying that you value the time, you respect time, and you expect work life balance, at the same time, productivity also needs to be maintained and tracked and be efficient. And then there is accountability also that you're talking about, right? I need to finish what I need to finish before I leave. How do you handle that? Because most businesses have a challenge in that space.
I think for Ditya, because the team is not that big yet, it's not that difficult. It's easier for me to micromanage things, which is not the way it should be as the business grows. But still, because it's so new, I'm still involved in a lot of day to day things. So it's easier for me to keep track. Plus, I feel like in our bakery, we very clearly distinguished responsibilities of each person. So there's nobody's entering into the other person's business unless asked for or unless there is a requirement where one department needs more people and the other department happens to be empty, is when, like a cross happens. Otherwise, people are very sort of clear with what is it that they have to do. And since everybody's focusing on that, their own responsibilities, productivity automatically increases because they're very focused that this is what they have to do. So they will focus on that unless asked otherwise, which is very rare because, again, I don't want like people to get confused and then to feel like this is not what I signed up for. Why are you making me do this? Why are you making me do that? So yeah, I think that sort of clarity from the very beginning is very important.
So clarity, understanding where they are coming from, so your empathy plays a key role there, and defining each person's role and building accountability in the system. Very nice. And do you see anything else different from the previous generation that you do differently as a Gen Z entrepreneur?
I think it's using tech. I think a lot of things in my mom's business still now are I don't and please don't hate me, mama. Is that a lot of things are still on pen and paper, which
Ah,
is not great. Times have changed. It's also like she's in the textile business. So her industry overall is a little like, not super tech based. It's like the karigars, etc. The workers are also like sort of unskilled labor. For me, it's completely different. That also sort of makes a difference. But we do use tech more than the previous generation. But I think I'm still way far from how the world has progressed. Like
how much of AI do you use?
we do use AI in certain things. For example, if there's a cake order that needs, for example, with this like Barbie themed cake, okay? And we had to write Ziana, but in the same font as the Barbie font with the same pink and white outlines, but it did not have to be Barbie, it had to be Ziana.
Okay.
So doing this outside of AI is can be done, but if you just give a prompt to GPT saying remove Barbie, add Ziana, you just get
Just
it.
get
It's
it.
just so easy and it looks exactly like what the customer wants. So I think these small bits is where AI plays like a massive role in terms of business. And personally, of course, I use it for like my platforms, my LinkedIn, my Instagram, all of that.
Do you see that embracing AI will become
I think it's the
more
future.
deeper?
Yeah, yeah. I think it's the future. I don't think you'll ever be able to replace chefs. I think this was a research I did in my final year of college using like AI and automation in kitchens and can it replace chefs? I think our industry is so human driven
Mm.
that it's just not possible for robots to stand and do it. I think, I don't know.
Okay.
It's so artistic. There's just so many tiny, tiny things that, as we're like craftsmen, we're like artisans. So many tiny things people will come and be like, no, I don't want this dot here.
Ah.
So, it's very difficult for a robot to sort of do that. But yeah, the future of culinary is dependent on AI, but I don't think it can ever replace humans. It can only assist humans.
Earlier on, we used to see a lot of tiffin houses everywhere, right? Now, you step out, you see a lot of cafes, bistros, and bake houses. How is Ditya different from them? How have you evolved yourself?
So, of course, we do have a cafe. We do serve coffee and sandwiches, which is the basic main brief. But the way it stands out, I would say, is definitely the vibe of the place. So, when you enter any Ditya outlet, you will see a lot of color. You will see a lot of yellow, which is the color of joy. Also happens to be my favorite color, so it has to be yellow. You will see one of the outlets actually has an open kitchen. So we have a glass, and the customers actually able to see their cake being done literally in front of their eyes. Difficult to maintain because you have to maintain the cleanliness, you have to make sure everything is very hygienic, the staff is very hygienic at all times. But again, I would say that that's an experience that you sell. So when you enter Ditya, you will see a lot of color, you will see a lot of warmth. A lot of people who've come to Ditya have also said that they feel like a weird power. I don't know how to explain it. I don't know if it's my sister, but yeah, like
Oh,
like
sweet.
a sense of warmth. We have like some small games and stuff. So a lot of kids after school actually come up. You'll find them playing Jenga, Mono Deal, Uno. We keep working with a lot of organizations to host workshops. We recently did like it's this Japanese art. It's called kintsugi. If I don't think I'm pronouncing it right, but it's basically you take a ceramic piece, break it, and then sort of put
And
it back together.
yeah.
And that sort of, is has such a deeper meaning to it than just putting pieces back. So yeah, we just keep working with a lot of these organizations to, just promote it and make it an inclusive space for everybody.
So from the time you have imagined culinary as an art to today, how has it evolved?
I think so. If you would remember when you would also have been much younger than what you are now, there used to be one Khana Khazana on the
Absolutely,
TV.
I remember.
Only one Sanjeev Kapoor would be there,
Yeah.
who he would be cooking. That's what my grandmother used to see. So that's what I used to see. And I think that is how it started. I think he has been such a change maker in the culinary world. I think it's only after him and how he has shaped the industries that people have started understanding that, oh, this is also a profession that people can actually pursue. I don't think I know of any chefs before him. I'm sure there
No,
must
we
have
were
been.
also inspired by Tarla Dalal a lot.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Tarla
Tarla
Dala.
Dalal was a
All
big
these
inspiration
people,
for us.
yeah, they were all these, like change makers, pinnacle people who like were just sort of brought the industry to life. And after that, of course, my generation, little over me, chefs like Saranj Koila, Nahita Dhundi, they're all my college alumni also, and they're doing such great work in the industry, such massive breakthroughs they've seen with their businesses. I think yeah, it has changed completely now. I don't think things are the way they used to be when Sanjeev Kapoor would have done his hotel management. I think it's very, very different.
Ananya, what is the difference between a kitchen in London and a kitchen in India?
It's a lot different than what it is in our country. Like,
Yeah.
I happen to work in a coffee shop in London. I think that was the first big difference. Obviously, I haven't worked in a coffee shop in India, but people are just, it was an LGBT run cafe. So our owners are all LGBT. And of course, I got to know a lot about that society. But apart from that, people was just so inclusive in general to, just there was no discrimination in terms of me being Indian. There was no discrimination in terms of me not knowing a certain thing about a certain recipe or not knowing a technique. They were just so sweet in explaining everything and teaching everything. And in fact, in Ditya, I still have a lot of recipes that I'm using from my days in London, from when I
Ah,
used to work there. I think my time at Finks, which is where I used to work, played a huge role in how I shaped Ditya, like massive. And in India, I think now it has changed a lot after the new labor laws, I've heard. But before that, when I was working, I did not like it. It was a lot of, like, I told you the story about the chef who was
yes,
not
yeah.
empathetic at all. This one time we had like a buffet service going on, and this head chef, I had like a friend of mine. He was serving something, and the chef just shouted at him and was like, "Kya ladki ki tarah dal raha hai?"
Oh
It was
my.
just, and I just stood there and was just looking at him like, what is this supposed to
Yeah.
mean? Like, what? How does this make any sense? And of course, we couldn't do that anything at that time because we were too young, and we just had to like, I think, do
Interesting.
nothing, just listen to it. But yeah, that is the difference. It's massive. It's very different. I really hope and pray that things have changed now. I don't know. I haven't really been in a commercial kitchen outside of Ditya recently, but yeah, I like to believe that
Can
it's
you
not
be
like that.
sure that you're bringing that change that you want to
Absolutely,
see?
100%. Please visit Ditya. You'll know. You can literally see my stuff through the glass.
That's
Yeah.
that's nice. And if you were to name some of the top chefs in India
Yeah.
who you look up to and you're inspired by, who would it be?
I'd say Saranj Koila for sure. He's also a friend, but I think the way he's handled his business, he started this brand called Goila Butter Chicken. Before that, he started another brand which did not work. So whenever, I'm in that headspace of not knowing what to do, I will always look up his journey. And yeah,
Get
I think
inspired by it.
yeah, 100%.
And if I was to ask you to name a female chef in India,
Female chef.
though you
I'd
don't
say
want to say that, female,
I'd say Anahita. Anahita Dhundi, she's done some crazy work in Parsi food I'm not sure about Bangalore and Bombay. I think the Parsi culture is a little more alive here, but in Delhi it's not. And she's played such a massive role in sort of shaping that, just spreading awareness about Parsi cuisine, the kind of dishes that are there. And yeah, she's done great work. Great work.
Ananya, ready to move to rapid fire?
Yes and no.
You've seen them. One word to describe the vibe in the kitchen right before the doors open.
Joy.
Joy. Beautiful. The ultimate comfort food you bake when you are having a terrible day.
It's not something that I bake, but it's something that I love to eat, and that's curd rice. It's so basic, but I think it's extremely comforting.
Yeah? Your comfort food is curd rice.
Yes.
Do you have any common comfort foods that you hear from people?
In North India, it's mostly limited to like chole bhature, etc.
Yeah,
But for me, it has to be curd
curd
rice.
rice. Sweeping or mopping your own bakery. That act. Is it a humbling reality check or is it a standard operating procedure?
For me, it's very normal. It's a standard operating procedure. Every Tuesday, our Didi is on chutti. I'm the one who's sweeping and mopping. It's very normal. It's very, very normal for me.
Okay. The most annoying assumption people make about Gen Z bosses.
That they don't know what they're doing.
Hmm. But looks like you're very clear on what you want.
I hope. I hope that's how the world perceives me.
Okay. What's a bigger asset in businesses? Massive financial backing or bulletproof mental resilience?
Mix of both.
If your yoga mentor gave you one piece of advice for a stressful Diwali rush, what would it be?
Do your back bends and release all that tension.
But you do keep practicing.
Yeah, absolutely. Every day. It's been, what, 4 years now. Been doing yoga every day.
The worst piece of business advice you have ever received from an elder.
I think most of them just say that you don't have to give a reaction to everything and that you just have to listen things from one ear and let them out the other. But I don't think every situation calls for it. I think sometimes you have to raise your voice. But the generation above us just doesn't seem to get it.
Baking manually by hand or automating it with tech, which gives you more joy?
Obviously by hand.
Hand.
100%.
How much of it is automated?
I mean, yeah, we do have machines for a lot of things. For example, we have a dough sheeter, which is like a huge ass rolling pin in the form of a machine. So it's more consistent. But doing things by hand will obviously be better. Yeah.
When someone tells you send your father to negotiate, your internal reaction is?
Why? No. Talk to me.
Yeah. Kitchen without empathy is just a?
Sad place to be in.
Even for the food, I guess,
Yeah.
right?
Because all that emotion goes into the food that you're
Food.
making. So
Did you really see that difference when you cook with love and when you cook with anger?
absolutely.
Yeah.
You can see it in your mom's hand. Haven't you seen like when your mom cooks something, it's automatically always better than somebody else who's doing it. It's just, that bhavna that comes from within, that purity. I think it reflects fully in your food.
And how do you maintain that with all you're the chef, but I'm sure you have other chefs.
I think it's just compartmentalizing in my brain. So when I'm in the kitchen, I would just focus things about the kitchen. When I'm outside of kitchen, suppose I'm meeting like my social team, all my attention will be there. So it's not, I don't let things mix in so that I'm able to sort of give my full attention to where I am and sort of learn to be in present, which is extremely difficult because my mind is always running. But that is something that I'm working on. I'm trying slowly now.
And how do you help your chefs keep that calm state of mind when they are?
I think
Okay.
it's just when somebody commits an error is to not give a reaction. So every time something goes wrong, before I say something and mentally I will take like a 2 second pause and say, Ananya, respond, not react. And then when I approach a situation, this is something that I've recently started doing. It was not like this always earlier. Even I've had days when I've lost my calm in the kitchen, but sort of doing this little 2 second process has changed things completely.
So beautiful. Thank you so much, Ananya, for taking us into your beautiful world of baking and kitchen and your journey. Best wishes to Ditya. More power to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.